All right, you ready for episode 2?
Yeah, let's do this.
How did you feel after our first episode, which feels like ages ago?
I loved it. I loved the process and the conversation and kind of reviewing, like going back and revisiting a little bit. I really liked it.
It's funny because, as folks that are probably listening to this can understand, finding time to sit down, the two of us, for any period of time and have an uninterrupted conversation seems very challenging.
Oh, the stars have to align for that to happen. It's a miracle.
Well, and if we have time, the thought that we're going to spend it recording a podcast instead of taking a nap or taking a drive and or hike or whatever else.
Yeah, that too.
It takes a little bit to commit to this, but I think we've both been really looking forward to having the next conversation.
Yeah, I have. I really have. And then we had to take a pause.
We did. Why do we have to take a pause, Rachel?
Because I got
Here we go.
Because I got sick and I got a cough. And I'm assuming that the people listening don't want to hear me cough every time I try to breathe or laugh or talk.
Yeah.
So we tried to take some days off.
I will try to be less funny for you this time.
That's hard.
I'll do my best. And I will do my best on the editing to cut the coughs out for everybody. But one thing that I think folks, it would be useful just so folks have some idea. One, I listened to our last podcast, which was fun to kind of listen back to. I talk a lot. And I want to acknowledge that it's a really big goal of ours for this to be a shared conversation. And we're going to try to switch facilitators over time. Rachel does so much great work leading lots of groups, leading lots of conversations and webinars. She's great at facilitating. And so we'll trade off. For right now, I think you feel a little more comfortable with me doing the first couple, but then we'll start trading off. And I will definitely try to not be so long-winded.
All right, everybody heard that, right?
It's so hard.
I don't think of you as a long-winded person.
Can I tell you a quick story?
Okay.
I'll try to make it quick.
Okay.
So there was one of the most embarrassing moments when I was like working at the last startup I was working at. We had like an offsite, which you love when we have offsite.
Uh-huh.
And we had a facilitator, and he was a great guy, and it was just the executive team. And the first half of the day, he just made the comment, everyone's doing a really good job of sharing the space and everyone's having equal conversation. The second half of the day, he slipped me a note halfway through saying, "You have talked more than 60% of the time."
Ouch.
My heart dropped. I felt really bad. I don't ever mean to do that, but I do get a little bit talkative from time to time.
And for me as a social worker, I'm really, really used to listening. I do a lot of listening in my work, and I do a lot of holding my tongue and like just letting people go and vent and share. So I don't even think it's just a way we're well matched, I guess.
It's one of the many ways. Well, last little caveat is we are stealing this time with our son, Nate, in the other room watching YouTube, and that could change at any moment. We may have interruptions. We'll do our best, but this is real life, and that's part of the point of this podcast. So last time we just did intros, and one of the other things that we're kind of deciding between, and you folks listening can help us decide as we go along, is part of this is going to be telling our story, not because we think our story is amazing, but because that's a vehicle with which we can help bring up topics and experiences that might connect with other people and might give them some thoughts or some things to think about. But we also want to do some topical episodes. I know as a dad, it's stereotypical, but like the financial situation and how we're going to support Nate for his whole life and the decisions, like there's a bunch of things that IEPs, there's all these things that I think we'll want to do topical shows on. Sure. But I think we're going to start this episode is going to be a little bit more on the narrative side, talking about when we first learned about Nate's situation, his diagnosis, and some of the things with our older son, Isaac, as well, that kind of impacted our experience with that as well. And just kind of getting introduced to the whole world of disability and diagnoses and the medical profession and all that kind of stuff. So that's going to be what we're going to talk about today. Does that sound good to you?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's dive in.
You seem a little bit like, oh my gosh.
I mean, those were heavy times. Those were intense times. So even I think revisiting that like thinking about revisiting it is like, whew, okay, it makes me want to like roll up my sleeves and settle in.
Let's paint the picture. How old were we when we got married? And how old were we when Isaac was born?
Yeah, so we got married when we were both had just turned 24. So we were very young, but we had been a couple at that point for about 5 years. We had been together for a long time, but we were 24, we got married. Before we turned 26, we had Isaac, and we owned a house. So it was a really fast progression between when we were 24 and 25. Before we turned 26, we had Isaac.
Yeah, it's funny you bring up the house. Talk about different times. Certainly different, meant something differently to buy a house in your 20s than it does now. But we had Isaac. We were the most eager parents. We were reading everything. We thought we were just going to be so much, like, not necessarily better than other people at parenting, but we were just so eager. We were just like so confident that we were going to be this great family. Then Isaac was born. How long did it take?
Well, Isaac was a crier, you might say. I think we would describe him as being colicky or having colic. I think you reached your first frustration point when he was about 36 hours old in the hospital room when he wouldn't stop crying. But he did a lot of crying that first 6 months, or 8 months. He did a lot of crying, which was an intense introduction to parenting.
It was so intense. I think you're being generous. I think it was less than 24 hours before I was just like, will you please just shut up so I could sleep? I mean, he was relentless with his crying. And every picture we have of him for the first 6 months, you had your PEPS group, friends that had kids at the same time. Every other kid would be plopped up and like smiling, and Isaac was just tantruming.
Yeah.
So it was such a tough, for like such bright-eyed parents. It was a tough introduction. And then talk a little bit about his development and where there was some hiccups. And this will all come back to be relevant to the Nate conversation.
Yeah. So Isaac was developmentally on task and neurotypical. If anything, he was a little advanced in his physical development. He was a really early crawler and a really early walker.
When did he learn to crawl, and where was he when that happened?
He learned to crawl and he started crawling when he was 5 months old, when we were in Long Island for 9/11. And we were stuck at the airport, unable to get home. And that's when Isaac learned to crawl.
He was trying to escape.
Fun times.
Yeah. Go on.
Anyway,
sorry. Yeah.
He was really on track physically, but his language development was notably behind. And by the time he was 2, he was starting speech therapy.
Do you remember that? I'm having trouble even recalling like the progression of when we started noticing issues with speech, and then when we went to get like an evaluation.
Yeah, I have a sense that it was like he was about 18 months old. The other kids were starting to get some words. And while 18 months old is very early to be worried about a speech delay, we were those kinds of parents.
First time parents. I mean.
We were nervous parents paying attention very carefully. And so eventually he ended up, I can't remember, but sometime maybe around 22 months old, he got a neurodevelopmental evaluation. And other than that, yes, he is speech delayed. They found him to be pretty much a neurotypical guy. But I wouldn't say that was reassuring to us. Like, finding out that Isaac had a speech delay was devastating. And in retrospect, we may have overreacted, but at the time, it was devastating.
That's so interesting to hear you recall it. And I'm realizing as well that I'm wanting to ask you these questions after you talk, but I'm also realizing you're sick, so I'm probably making you talk more than you need to.
I'm good. Don't worry about that.
All right. So I remember us getting the evaluation back, and it was a credible child language specialist at like Children's Hospital or something like that, and telling us that he had apraxia
Right.
and that she said he may never speak, and that he may have other delays, and that this could be something like she was going through all these descriptions of how he was able to have motor control in his mouth and that he lacked that and all these other things. And you and I went home after that. And do you remember that day? You remember what we did?
I remember it really carefully because our house was for sale and it was an open house. And we got home so devastated from that appointment, and the realtor was there. And I think she took one look at our faces and packed everything up and shut down the open house and left. And we were really, really upset.
We went into our room and we cried together.
Yeah.
I mean, it was devastating. And I think it's important to bring this up because I've learned since then. I mean, I was having my genuine experience. I wasn't trying to do or not do anything. That was just how I felt. There's a lot of folks in the disability community that really do not appreciate parents feeling like it's a tragedy when their child has a disability.
Yeah.
And so I'm always like careful, or I've tried to be thoughtful about that's how we felt. That's the genuine feeling. Yeah. I think we feel a little differently now, but I mean, I think it's just important to acknowledge that conversation in the community.
Right. If I was me now, I would have had a very different reaction to that. But we were very young and very new to this whole world. And my dad shared a story about me when I was a baby and that I had some minor foot problem and that I needed corrected. And he said, there's just something about that moment where somebody tells you your perfect baby isn't perfect.
Yes.
And I think that was sort of where we were.
Yeah. That's why, I mean, the last episode we talked about our expectations of what it was like to be, what we thought our family was gonna be like, and then what it was, and the juxtaposition of that. And that was a moment there where it was like so quickly, all of a sudden, what we thought we were going to have as a family, I thought was threatened. And what was that going to mean if our child never spoke? And so we'll fast forward a little bit, but Isaac went like a couple things that I think are important there. We attacked it with vigor, right? So we wanted to learn everything we could about this. We went to a parent program that was, I think, a really good program in retrospect about teaching parents how to work with kids that have developmental delays. And I remember the notion of abandon your agenda, and instead of asking them a bunch of questions when they have speech issues, actually observing or mentioning things and not putting the pressure on them to actually have the words to respond because they don't have the words with questions. Like there's a lot of, I thought, pretty useful concepts that came out.
We learned a lot.
Yeah. We went, I think it was like a weekly thing, and we went there for a few weeks. Anyway. And he went to Kindering Center, which is a Seattle-based or East Side-based K to 3. Is that?
No, is 0 to 3.
0 to 3.
Early intervention.
Yeah, sorry. The wrong, 0 to 3, early intervention. And he was getting therapy for speech. And it felt like to me that then, like, there was one day, all of a sudden, he came into the kitchen and he recited the ABCs, like, perfectly. That was, for me, the moment. It was like, oh my God, like, he's going to be, quote, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I had a similar, I remember him telling me, I want to fly like a rocket ship or a bird. And he was saying it in his classic, like, so can you make that happen, Mom? kind of tone. But I was so happy. Like I was counting how many words were in the sentence. And I remember, I don't know how many words that is, but thinking like, all right, I think I don't have to count words anymore. I think we've gotten there.
So the reason that whole little anecdote of Isaac's experience, I think, at least to me, where it matters is when we get into talking about the Nate experience in a second. Even to this day, and I bet you have a different reflection on it, but even to this day, I am very upset at the person who gave us the apraxia diagnosis. I don't think he was had apraxia. I don't think there's evidence that that's what he had. I think he had a minor speech delay that worked itself out. I think all the therapy we did couldn't have hurt, but I don't know that it was like transformative. I think it just was one of those things where he was late to talk, and we went through a lot of trauma because this person diagnosed and used a term that came with a lot of other implications. And I was left really feeling like if we had just kind of treated and reacted to what he was presenting as issues, it would have been such a less traumatizing experience. And so that really colored when we get into the conversation with Nate, it colored my reaction when we started getting some information about him.
Yeah. I don't know. I haven't spent a lot of time being mad at that person who made that diagnosis. Although I do feel it was definitely a lot of unnecessary fear and trauma that obviously when you know now that he's like a college graduate who lives on his own and has a job and friends and a social life and all of that, like it seems kind of silly. But at the time, and I think this is what you're getting at with setting the stage for when Nate was born, it was like genuinely traumatic. And it was genuinely really, really scary and sort of shook our world at that moment. And then at around age 3, right around when we started getting ready to have our second, Isaac was like graduated speech therapy and was on to preschool and was doing great. And it was like, okay, good. Look at that. We dodged that major bullet. We handled that. We did it. And then Nate was born.
Yeah. 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 And I guess, I mean, I'm not angry at that person. So I want to be clear. I'm not angry, but like I do carry like frustration, and I would tell that person, I've given a lot of praise to a lot of people that have helped us along the way, including the folks in that speech kindering center that I thought were great with Isaac. But I think the people that are handing out diagnoses, it is such a huge responsibility, and there's so much error that goes along, like in evaluating these types of issues, and knowing how much most parents, especially first-time parents, are paying attention to every single word and every bit of tone and intonation. Like, I just don't think that person did a great job in that moment, and they might not even think that at this point. Who knows? But so let's fast forward. So Nate's born.
Actually, I think we need to back up from before Nate's born, because there were 9 months of being pregnant with Nate, and I think like the stage we just set of like we were coming out of what felt at the time like the most traumatizing thing, and then I was pregnant, and immediately the doctor started flagging all sorts of high risk stuff, and immediately telling us they think something's wrong. And then they would have us do some invasive tests, have me do some invasive tests. They would clear up what they thought was wrong, or they would rule out what they thought was wrong, but then say, but while we were there, we discovered this other thing. And it went on like that for like literally 37 weeks where they never actually found anything of substance, but they just over and over again kept telling us something's like, there might be something wrong. And then he was born at 37 weeks, healthy. There was nothing wrong health-wise, but that was already in our minds. And I would say to this day, I say from day one, I felt like there was something unique or different about Nate than from other babies.
From day one of
when he was finally born.
Yeah. So such a great example of the different experiences of dads and moms. You know, I wouldn't have even recalled that. Like, I remember as you're talking about it, I remember that there was a lot of questions, but a lot of it for me was, okay, but they keep coming back with nothing's wrong. And so I didn't have any fear that there was something wrong with Nate along the way. But it sounds like for you, even during the pregnancy, you were carrying a lot of concern that there might be issues.
I was being fed a lot of concern. I was being referred to high risk OBGYNs and having to have all sorts of extra testing and stuff, always for them to say, no, we didn't find anything. But I remember one doctor saying to me during an exam while I was pregnant, well, the good news is he has eyeballs. And I laughed kind of nervously, like, and he was like, it's not funny. A lot of babies are born without eyeballs. And
great.
Like it was, this was just a scary world to be in. And anyway, I don't know why I shared that story, but it's just like, it was a hard experience to go through.
Well, we won't dive too deep there. I'll just say that it is a great example. Hello, Nate. Do you want to come say hi? Okay. It's a great example of the experiences that so many women go through during pregnancy, that bedside manner, like the comments that people make or don't make, the reassurances that they give or don't give. A lot of women, like I wasn't at most of these appointments. You're doing this on your own. I'm at work. I'm doing whatever. And it's just a big burden and a big mind game that goes on well before the kid's even born.
Yeah, that's fair.
My asterisk would have been that I always wanted to have 2 kids until we had one. And I was like,
who cried a lot.
Yeah, I was like, maybe one's good. And you really wanted 2. And that'll come up a little bit later, but I think that you felt some responsibility for us having a second kid, and that we made that decision because it wasn't a foregone conclusion that we're going to have Nate.
Right.
But we did. So Nate's born, has that shock of red hair on the Apgar table that like shocked us both. And he was not a crier. He was a crier in the car, but he was a pretty well-mannered kid.
He was a really quiet, sleepy baby.
We thought we maybe hit it. Like, oh my God, we had the hard first one. All these other people that talk about, oh, I've got an easy kid. Like we thought maybe we are going to have that.
It was our turn for the easy kid.
And in a lot of ways, he still is. In a lot of ways, I would say he's still an easy kid, but not in all ways. Say a little bit about when you started having questions about Nate's development and what our situation was and your situation was at that point.
Yeah. Like I said, I kind of felt like from day one, there seemed to be something different about him. Although he was healthy, like eating was difficult, getting him to eat enough and nurse enough and sleep enough or wake up enough to eat. And then eventually, as he got a little older, getting him to sleep during the night was like all of those things that you measure with a baby were difficult. And and some of his like physical milestones, like rolling over and sitting up, those things came, but they came late. What I remember from those early stages is we had like a 3.5-year-old and an infant, and I was a stay-at-home mom full time, and you were working a lot, and a career opportunity came up for you right at that time in those earliest years that ultimately pretty much made your career and was a huge gift to you.
Nate, what would you like to tell us? You talking about trails that you want us to go on?
Same page.
It's on the same page?
Same page?
Okay, can you let us finish our conversation, Nate?
What, you like those flowers?
Oh.
Is that where we went on our trip?
Yeah.
Oh,
I love that.
That's a great picture, Nate. Thanks for sharing.
So you had this amazing career opportunity. And so what I remember from that time, while I was a stay-at-home mom at that time. And right in that first early year with both kids, you came upon this amazing job opportunity that ended up making your career, but it was a huge commitment time-wise and was going to require you to be out of state, I think 3 to 4 days a week for about 6 months.
We didn't know how long.
We didn't know how long. Now, we made the decision together for you to do that, to take that job opportunity. This was never something that was done to me. This was something we decided together. But it was really, really hard, because what it essentially meant was that I was fully responsible for the 3.5-year-old and the infant 3 or 4 days out of the week while Brian was out of state.
You were dealing with that while I was discovering the wonders of corporate travel, and that staying in really nice hotels in the Bay Area, getting room service and working my tail off, but having the time of my life, like challenging myself, learning, working with people that were incredibly inspiring. And it was a very momentous, part of my life as a person and as a professional. And you and I were having very different experiences.
Yeah, I remember you came home once from one of your trips, and there was a salad bowl that I had tried to put away in the cabinet, and like somehow it got stuck and it was hanging half out of the cabinet. And you came home and you were like, what's going on with the salad bowl? And I was like, if you don't understand why I couldn't fix that salad bowl, then you don't know what's going on around here. It was hectic times. And right in that year, in Nate's first year, or Nate's first, I would say 8 months, was when his earliest developmental delays were really starting to show. And I was starting to really see, probably because of how much time I was spending with other babies, that he wasn't developing like other babies around him.
So you had your experience with Isaac. How did did that play a role at all in your evaluation of Nate?
Yeah, I think it was, first of all, it made me like, even before he was born, and I felt like this on the day or two after he was born, I was putting so much pressure on him in my own head to be neurotypical, because I was so scared of a repeat of what had happened to Isaac, that I was watching him like a hawk from day one, which I don't, measuring his development and comparing him to other kids. And I really regret doing that because of how much anxiety and grief it caused me, like to end up where we are anyway. Like it didn't help his development for me to be so nervous and neurotic about it. But nevertheless, that's where I was.
And not only was I traveling a lot, but when I was home, I mean, we had our battles with Nate, which were generally at night. When I was home, I would deal with him a lot at night, trying to get him back to sleep. But my general impression of Nate at that time was, my God, he's so pliable compared to Isaac. He was so agreeable to different, like he would sit there and he would cuddle, and he would sit in my arms, and he was not screaming. And like, I found him to be such a pleasure. And it was almost like it was harder for me to even imagine, like, well, he's fine. Like, it was basically like you were maybe having all these alarm bells.
Mm-hmm.
I was seeing him as fine, plus the experience I'd had with Isaac, whereas like, we're not going to be that duo again where we completely freak out about every little thing. I'm going to just like, we're going to be fine. That was basically,
yeah.
And it wasn't like I was trying to do that. That was just how I felt at that time. And so then you eventually got him evaluated, and you got him evaluated, I think, largely because of speech again, right?
No, I'll tell you, I think this is an important story in that I spent every checkup, and in that first 6 to 8 months, you're going to well child checks like frequently. Anytime I saw Nate's pediatrician, I expressed concern. He's not growing, he's not eating, he's not sleeping, he's not developing like other kids. He's not developing the way I would expect him to do too. And every time they told me, he's fine, you're overreacting. He eventually, the pediatrician said, fine, I will make a referral for you to get him evaluated, but there is nothing wrong with him, and it's only because it'll make you feel better.
Oh, wow.
And we then, with that referral, took him back to Kindering, where we had all those fun times with Isaac, and got him evaluated, and he qualified in every single area. And I'd like to
Well-
share that story.
Hold on one second.
Yeah.
But you didn't take him there expecting him to qualify in every single area. I specifically remember you had like primarily around speech, or there might have been two things.
mhm.
And then they got back. It was a generalized, like,
Yeah, that's true. I think I was like, he doesn't seem, although he wasn't even a year old. You don't expect much speech, but I think I don't know. I don't know what it was. I knew he needed to be in there.
Yeah.
And I'd like to share that story about the pediatrician because I'll tell you, as we said in the last episode, I've spoken to hundreds of parents. That is such a universal story. And when you talked a little while ago about the experiences that women have with medical providers, I think about that so much, that there's like, I was a really young woman and I had an older male doctor just completely ignoring my concerns until he eventually like, fine, like almost did it like I was a petulant teenager. And I was right. And I had cause to be concerned. And anyway, the medical system is not always easy to navigate.
And let's be honest, it wasn't just the medical system. You and I weren't having disagreements about this, or like there wasn't any tension. I don't remember.
I don't either.
But I thought it was like you were very traumatized from the Isaac situation. I thought you were being a little bit overly concerned. I did not expect to get back that there was some massive delay. And even if we did get some kind of diagnosis, I was going to be very skeptical.
Yeah. And I think it's worth pointing out, there was no diagnosis made. He was about 10 months old. They evaluated him in a number of areas like OT, PT, speech, cognitive, social, emotional, and found that he qualified in pretty much all of them except social emotional. He was a really socially motivated and connected kid. But yeah, he did qualify. And starting then, right at about 11, 12 months old, he started pretty intensive therapies, like in all those areas, and has been in that his whole life since then.
I'm trying to recall roughly where this was in my work experience. So the work experience that we're talking about that I had was an acquisition. I worked at Adobe, and we were acquiring Macromedia, and it was this big public deal, multiple $1 billion. And so I was down in San Jose, the headquarters of Adobe, a lot, and it was going through antitrust. And so we had an entire floor of one of the towers reserved just for the people working on this acquisition. And there was only a handful, like there was like 3 or 4 of us. So there was dozens of empty offices, and I had my own office, and I was like out there. There was no one on the floor, and I get a call from you. This is after months of me being down here most of the time, and you tell me this story through tears that Nate's got a generalized delay. And my biggest fear, I'm going to try not to get too emotional because I feel it already, but my biggest fear, even before we had a family, was that I was going to have a job that didn't allow me to be the dad and the father, dad and the husband that I wanted to be. And it was going to get in the way. And that I was going to, part of the reason I didn't end up being a sports journalist when I went to school to be a sports journalist is because, one, it didn't get paid very well. But 2, if there's a story that breaks and you're at your kid's birthday party, you kind of got to go cover it. And I just I didn't want that in my life. I wanted more control. And so when you and I had made this decision together that I should take this opportunity, I had been more skeptical of it than you even. You were like really encouraging me to take this leap. And it was amazing. But at that moment, I felt like everything I had feared had come true, that I was sitting here 1,000 miles away from you, that you were dealing with this by yourself, that our son now had this delay, and I was alone. Like there was nobody there to process that with. Even if I was to talk to somebody about that, nobody knows how to have that conversation with you as a friend, as a family member. Your parents don't know how to talk to you about it. Your siblings don't know how to talk to you about it. Like it's a very isolating moment.
It is. I think you're making such a good point that people don't know how to talk about it. When you're saying, well, people ask you a lot, how's the baby doing? And the answer is, well, he's developmentally delayed. And the general answer you get is, but he'll be okay, or he's going to be fine. I'm sure he'll catch up, or he's a great kid. How could he possibly be like that? And when although that's so well intentioned and kind and loving, it's not necessarily what is helpful to hear.
Is it really well? Like, I don't think people have bad intentions, but people want to be assured all the time. And like, it's like when you ask someone, forget kids, and you say, how's your day going? How was your weekend? No one really wants to hear if you had a bad weekend. They just want to hear, it's like, it's a conversational lubricant just to like pass things along. And very, very few people actually want to know how you're doing and how your kid's doing. And if there's challenges, they just would rather it be okay because it's easier for them if it's okay. That's what makes some of the people that really stand out. That's what makes some of the people that are genuinely interested and do take a moment. They're 1 in 1,000, 1 in 10,000. Like, it's very rare. And so those people really do stand out. They want to know.
That's true.
But yeah, so like, you were alone too. I mean, you had the kids and you had with you. What was your experience in getting this news and kind of reacting to it?
Gosh, I mean, I can't, it's like so hard to even put my head into that space. I have a distinct image in my head of when he got the full evaluation. They said, okay, we're going to take about an hour and go through the results, and then we're going to meet with you. And if he doesn't qualify for services, I'll come in and let you know. And if he does qualify, we'll all come in and talk about a plan. And so I have this image in my head of them all, like 5 or 6 of the therapists all walking in a row, and me thinking, all right, here we go. Like, life's about to change. And what I really distinctly remember the most from those early stages is the overriding goal being, let's get him caught up. Like, let's take this, beautiful, healthy little guy who's developmentally delayed for reasons we don't know. And like, give him the extra support he needs so he can catch up. And while that was super triggery because we had already been through that, it was also something we've been through. Like, okay, let's catch him up. Isaac was delayed and he got caught up. Let's catch up. And I mean, maybe this is a good way to sort of wind down for today, but we all know like Nate was not destined to catch up.
Yeah.
And having a whole plan and a whole strategy that focuses on getting a child with a disability to, quote, catch up. What I've come to see is that that's harmful. And that was harmful to us at that stage. Like, if you think about the things you wish people had done differently, I can talk, and I've had the privilege of talking to early intervention providers over the years about what would be helpful and what's not helpful, and focusing on catching up for a person who is never destined to catch up is not helpful. But yeah, that was sort of the beginning of a journey.
Yeah. Yeah. And before we kind of wrap, I as we kind of get there, I think you touched on it, but I think it's worth just re-articulating. He did not receive a diagnosis. It was, here are the things that he is not age appropriate with, or he is delayed with. And I distinctly remember, while I described, like, I definitely, my feeling was more about the fact that I was separated from you geographically, and that I wasn't there for you and for the family. I wasn't as traumatized or concerned that this was this big thing, partly because I thought, okay, we went through this before Nate caught up. These people say all these things. They don't know what they're talking about. He's going to be fine. All these other things. I had personally, like, Nate had done things even back then, little games you could play where you hide something from him, like in a hand or behind him or under a pillow. At like 6 months old, he was able to always find these things. I was like, this kid's really smart. Like, I actually thought he was really smart, and I still think he's really smart. But I didn't have this, oh no, here's like, I didn't have that reaction I did with the Isaac news when there was a diagnosis. And so I'm wondering if that's something that you have had experience with other parents as well, where are diagnoses where you get a word. He wasn't diagnosed with autism at that point, and we'll talk about that another time. But
Mhm.
do you find that it's easier for parents that get a diagnosis, or easier for parents that are just told, hey, you need to start giving more services to this kid?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I mean, I talk to families who've had the range of experiences, the parents who know while they're pregnant that their child has a disability,
Mm-hmm.
parents who find out at birth or where the disability began at birth, or families like ours who waited almost 13 years for a diagnosis. Like, and I do think the not knowing adds a certain level of a certain type of torture in a way that I've talked to a lot of parents where I say, God, those early years at kindering were our worst. I hated them. And because I was in a bad place, I hated kindering, kindering is beautiful. They're a
It's
wonderful
great.
place.
Yeah.
But, like my feelings were just like,
Yeah.
I hated everything about those early years. But when I talked to other parents who had a diagnosis, they found their time at kindering was such a relief and so nice to have, like, okay, we got this big scary diagnosis, but here's like help to be had. And I never had or it took years to get this big scary diagnosis. So instead it was just like professionals telling us for years, he should be doing more. He should be doing more, and pointing out problems and pointing out new ways that he wasn't like other kids. And that was a certain kind of torture.
I really I appreciate you kind of telling that, because that's part of the story, because I distinctly remember for you, the lack of diagnosis was really hard. The fact that it was, what's the percentage of disability that doesn't have a specific
That's a
diagnosis?
good question. I actually have no idea.
But it's a lot, like there's a large, it's like, it's not like a couple percent. It's like 10, 20, 30.
Yeah, I don't know, but it's not uncommon to have features of a disability without really knowing what's caused the disability.
And one of the challenges with that is when you have a diagnosis, there's kind of this menu, like this recipe of, okay, here's the services and here's the things that you qualify for in a lot of cases, or here's the ABCs of how to like deal with that.
And maybe more importantly, here's the support group you can join
Yes.
to meet other parents who are going through the same thing.
So when you don't have that and you're kind of just wandering the desert of disability as a parent, and no one knows, no one can tell you what the next day or the next week or the next group to join, like there's no connection. And it is torture. It was definitely torture. I remember for you that was very specifically frustrating. For me, I was super happy about that because, one, I wasn't dealing with what you were dealing with. I'm just going to keep reemphasizing that you had a very different experience and had a lot more responsibility and one-on-one time with this. But I appreciated it because I felt like the diagnosis really betrayed us the first time and led us down a path that wasn't helpful. And so let's just deal with what is showing up. And I had kind of suspended any real devastation or concern until like much later.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, I think that was an important part of it. And yeah, I guess as we kind of wrap on the diagnosis and the first, well, I guess we didn't get to a diagnosis, but that moment of being told that there is something wrong.
Yeah, and I would even rephrase it, because in looking back, I don't like to think of it as something wrong. But when being told like this child is not developing the way we would expect, this child is not neurotypical.
Yeah.
I mean, that would have been a nicer way to hear it, but that's how I like to think of that time.
Yeah. Yeah. And for us, again, I think it's also worth just acknowledging we were married. And even though we were not physically together as much at that time because of my travel, we did have each other to lean on, whether it was over the phone or whatever. There's a lot of folks that are getting these diagnoses or getting this information as single parents.
Yeah.
Or in a unhealthy relationship, or like all these other things, or they live in a place where the medical help is so much less available. So you're dealing with even less information about what's going on or less support. mean, in a lot of ways, we were fortunate
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure.
in the system that we were able to kind of experience.
Mm-hmm. Fortunate and victims of it at the same time.
Exactly.
I think.
All right. Well, let's wrap there. I will just remind folks that if you have ideas, questions, feedback of any sort for the show, you can email me at Brian, BRIAN, at Nemhouse, NEMHOUSE.com. You can find the podcast. I think you should be able to find it now on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, I guess it's called, right? I think it should be on Spotify. And then we started a Patreon, patreon.com/Nemhouse, NEMHOUSE. And thank you to Joey Austin and my mom, who are our first two patrons.
That just made me laugh. That's
don't
so
cough.
sweet.
You're not allowed to cough. And just as a reminder, we're not going to be using the money. Anything that we get financially from this podcast will be donated. We'll pick a charity. At this point, we don't have any money to speak of in this capacity to donate, but it is a way to support the show and help grow the community. And if you want to connect to other people through this show, the Patreon area is a great place to do it. And you don't have to donate anything. You can be a free member. It's totally fine. And that's a way that you can kind of signal that you might want to connect with other people that are going through what we're talking about, maybe what you're going through. So patreon.com/Nemhouse. With that, I'll just say I'm Brian Nemhauser.
I'm Rachel Nemhauser.
And this was episode 2 of the Nemhouse podcast. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much for listening.